In the aftermath of Zohran Mamdani's sweeping victory in the New York City Democratic mayoral primary, some of MAGA's most cosmopolitan figures suddenly seem to discover that Mamdani is Muslim, right on cue. They dusted off the racist, Islamophobic tropes of the post-9/11 era. GOP Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene posted an image of the Statue of Liberty draped in a burqa the morning after Mamdani's victory, writing, quote, "This hit hard. This hits hard." Trump ally Laura Loomer claimed that Mamdani is, quote, literally supported by terrorists. NYC is about to see 9/11 2.0. Okay, now that is just really stupid. And Republican Congressman Andy Ogles went even more extreme, writing on X, quote, "Zohran Little Muhammad Mamdani is an anti-Semitic socialist communist who will destroy the great city of New York." I hate to even just repeat this junk. And he called for him also to be deported. But, there's all this outrage over Mamdani's religion, especially when Democratic primary voters, and they turned out in record numbers and they didn't care. So what really should worry his critics is that Mamdani brings actual policy ideas to the table, and they were ideas that motivated typically low turnout voters to show up for him on Tuesday. So joining us now, Waleed Shahid, Democratic spokesman, Democratic strategist, former spokesperson for Justice Democrats, and former senior advisor for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This was interesting to see just in terms of excitement. I felt like there was so much excitement in New York City politics that hasn't been here in a while. And then I remember the morning after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won and she came in and it was just, she had it. Do you think it's the same thing with Mamdani?
Yeah, definitely. I think many of the people around Zohran Mamdani who started the campaign, thought it was going to be a long shot, and the chances of success were not high. But I could tell when you were reading those hateful comments that there's something that just even repeating them feels ugly. And Toni Morrison has this quote where the worst thing about racism is that it's a distraction, and so we are missing an opportunity to engage with the substance of why the plurality of voters chose Zohran Mamdani, which is a conversation about rent, a conversation about groceries, and a conversation about public transit in the city. And, on both the Democratic Party side and the Republican Party side, the Democratic Party side might not be as extreme as the Republican Party side, but the fact that we still waiting on endorsements from Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Dan Goldman for the Democratic nominee, there is a conversation we need to be having about, can we actually be in touch with what the New York voters, the New York Democrats actually voted for in the city, rather than endless media cycles about this kind of stuff that I think is not serving most New Yorkers.
How do we, to play devil's advocate, how do we know that the reason why the establishment types are avoiding endorsing or holding off on endorsing him, we don't know if they will eventually, is about the Islamophobia, and they don't want to be seen as endorsing
global jihad, Kristen Gillibrand?
Well, you think Hakeem Jeffries is worried about global jihad or whatever?
I think he does care about the perception that also paralyzed Kristen Gillibrand to be able to come out and say something thoughtful instead of falling into an Islamophobic trope. So I do think that they are paralyzed by that and they're unable to break through. But I mean,
that may be the case. There are a lot of other reasons why more moderate Democrats may not be on board with his agenda, including the fact that he is an avowed social, he's a Democratic socialist. That label in itself can be very toxic for the Democratic Party. And a lot of his policy proposals are, in fact, controversial, like whether we should have city-run grocery stores, for example, and a lot of the other things that he's promised he doesn't actually have power to do. So I just want to be careful about projecting why there might be hesitation, how much of it may be that it's all about Islamophobia. It may be that there actually is substantive disagreement about his ideas.
I would love a substantive debate about Democratic policy on rent or groceries or public transit, and that is a conversation we should be having.
I agree.
But and that would be a good conversation. It is still true that New York Democrats, I have not seen in my lifetime the Democratic Party leaders take this much time to endorse the Democratic nominee. And I am very strongly, I have the sense that it is not because of moderate economic policies. But if that is the concern, we should talk about that stuff, because if Democrats were openly debating every day on TV about their approach to affordability issues, that would be a good debate to see, for Americans to see. But instead, we're engaged in kind of culture war, kind of snipes. The comments that Gillibrand made a few days ago were pretty sickening.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
I mean, every time he appears on the media, he gets asked a very specific question that is not necessarily about the economic policies, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing I will
Even
say,
Brad Landers.
in most of the in Gillibrand's comments and Dan Goldman's comments, the criticism they had was about anti-Semitism, not Israel. That's what they said in their statements. And the thing that has not been talked about at all is the literal party that Eric Adams is running on in November as an independent candidate is the End Anti-Semitism Party. And so, to me, what is more of a cynical deployment of or use, a weaponization of Jewish pain than for the candidate who couldn't make it, who was too chicken to run in the Democratic primary, to now make his whole candidacy and make his whole party called the End Anti-Semitism Party? Like, that should be condemned by all Democrats. Like, and he's probably going to be the other candidate Zohran Mamdani is facing. We are not having a conversation about that at all.
Can you give some historical context to what some of this means in New York City? We see Republicans, but then also, as Eamon just spelled out, some Democrats kind of pulling people back to this post 9/11 moment in which many Muslim New Yorkers were treated terribly by their neighbors, were in fear. And this city, to see a Muslim man win now and to build coalitions and to walk the length of Manhattan, I think for many people who supported him was an exciting and reaffirming moment. But it feels like that explicit effort to bring us back to post 9/11 is very personal in that way. And I'm just wondering if you can kind of talk about the cultural context here in this city.
I mean, I'll talk about myself, which is when I was in 5th grade, when September 11th happened. And I remember we used to have current events class on Friday where we would read the newspaper and discuss it as a class. My parents told me to never talk about politics in school. And that was like, you know,
that worked out well.
Exactly.
But like that was the feeling amongst a lot of Muslim parents and Muslim kids in this country. Put your head down, don't get involved, don't talk about the news, don't make anyone upset. And then to come from that moment to this moment for Zohran Mamdani to be the potentially first Muslim mayor of the largest city in the country makes people like walk with a little bit of more pride and more like, this is a country we belong to. We have opinions. We want to share them. We want to be included. And what a beautiful moment, because this past year has been so hard for Muslim Americans to be able to express their political views of this country. There's been a rise of, obviously anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia and hate crimes. And I think, many people are like, there's a whole revival of Muslim civic engagement happening that has been happening all over the country, but now is like, being able to put together a coalition that is not just for Muslims, but for all New Yorkers.
Speaking of Mamdani, we're going to get a chance to ask him about those economic policies tomorrow because he's going to join us on the show. Walid Shahid, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.